Well, we made it to people's favorite month of the year, and but we're not going to talk about Halloween just yet. This is the pickups for September 2024. A couple big gets here, I would consider anyway. Some unique stuff and some special items from somebody. So yeah, it was as I predicted. It was a little easier this month. A lot of things from limited run, strictly limited, and some other things I've been waiting for to come in. So not many new games per se. Um, but then again, being a more retro collector, there's not really any typically new games per se, outside of like modern consoles from PS4 on up. But aside from that, there's one thing we're going to jump into from Limited Run that is not a video game, but is video game related. And that is the soundtrack to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters. This was one of the few soundtracks that Limited Run had for the Turtles collection that came out by Konami not too long ago. I think it was actually like last year. This is the last soundtrack to go, but I ended up picking that up just because of my more nostalgic reasons and some of the memories I have of Tournament Fighters. I actually picked up the game finally, and this was back when Midwest Gaming Classic was still in Brookfield, Wisconsin, in a very small hotel at the Sheraton, I believe. But it was just before the convention really blew up. It was only a couple years after it was known as the Atari convention. And I recall stepping into the vendor room at that time, which was very, very small. And in the corner was just shelves of Sega Genesis games. And the guy that was manning those shelves basically said, pick any game you want, $5 each, or $5 to $10, I think it was. So certain games were like $5 on certain shelves, and then $10 on certain shelves, and they were all in various conditions. So there were some that were loose. There was quite a majority of them that were complete, and you were able to go through and kind of mix and match. If something was missing a manual and there was one available that had one, you could make that complete, and it was $5 or $10. A great deal at the time. Of course, you're never going to see that stuff again. And I remember picking out Turtles Tournament Fighters because I was like, yeah, there's some games here that I was kind of interested in, and I wasn't really collecting a whole lot for Genesis at that time, but for whatever reason, I picked that one up. And I picked up a manual from one that looked like it was a better condition than another one, and kind of put it together in what I considered a recognizable condition. I mean, because there was like the plastic on the cases were ripped or whatever, and I happened to find one that had better art, swapped that out, swapped it with another case that had good plastic still on it that wasn't like scratched up or torn or anything like that. It looks like it was in fairly good condition. And to this day, I still have that copy. So it's been, geez, 8 years, 10 years now, maybe longer, actually, because that was well before 2015. So 20, 2012, 2010, maybe? Regardless, I mean, it was early days of Midwest Gaming Classic. And so, yeah, that was kind of my fond memory of that game. And it was one that I always wanted. It always been on my list. I gotta have turtles, gotta have turtles. So, aside from like Hyperstone Heist, which I did eventually get later on, and I still have, one of the few Genesis games I've actually kept in my collection. I've since kind of curated that and whittled that down to kind of my favorite Genesis games. I think I have around 15 or 16 Genesis games total, and in addition to one that you'll see here in a little bit. But yeah, it's one of those fun memories for me. So that's the reason why I ended up getting that soundtrack. Um, Moving on from that, we actually have some Dreamcast stuff. Was it Video Games New York had a sale, being that September 9th was celebrating 25 years of the Dreamcast. And generally, we do a big Dreamcast marathon for 12 to 24 hours. Bunch of the guys from the old Sega Addicts Megavision's crew come over. The last 2 years have been here at my place, and we hosted it here. And we usually take donations for the children's foundations and the children's hospitals throughout the U.S. So it's for a great cause. None of the proceeds go to us. We usually give out prizes, be they in the past, they've been like issues of Megavisions. We've given away a full Dreamcast with a couple games. One year, I actually had two custom made or custom painted Dreamcast controllers that we ended up giving away, which are really cool. I would probably never do that now these days with how expensive those controllers are now getting. Back then, I was picking them up for $5 or $10 each. I had a whole stack of Dreamcast controllers laying around, and I just thought it would be kind of cool to have some custom painted. And that's what we did. So some cool things like that. This year we did not. It's probably the first in the last 8 years that we haven't done a Dreamcast marathon. And Scotty, I'm sure if he sees this, can correct me in the comments, and I'm sure he will. But there was a very good reason why this year we didn't have one, and that was because of Scotty getting married. So congratulations to him and Rachel. It was a wonderful wedding. Had a great time. I do regret I wasn't able to spend more than one evening with everybody, but it was kind of not like a nice little reunion. So we did get together. We did get to hang out. A lot of people stayed and did game hunting and everything and hung out. Scotty actually had a Crazy Taxi stand-up arcade at the reception, which I did greedily get on quite a few times to play, because I don't get a chance to play a stand-up Crazy Taxi very often. So I was really happy to see that. And I kept encouraging him to try to buy that machine, but I don't think that happened, which is fine. You know, there's always time and a place for getting arcades. I myself, it's actually been a while since I've picked up any arcade now, almost a year since I've picked up any arcade hardware since. So, and usually I try to allow myself 1 to 2 a year, so I'm kind of behind on that. It just hasn't been a great year for it. Anyway. So back to Video Games New York having this sale for the Dreamcast anniversary. They had everything 25% off. So I went ahead and picked up 4 games for myself. So I got Supercharged Robot Kalkaiser, which is a homebrew shoot 'em up based off of giant robots on anime and so forth, as this classic 80s style anime stuff. And it was one that's been on my list to kind of get for a while, and I finally pulled the trigger. Then we got Volgar, which actually just announced a sequel for modern consoles, I believe Switch, PS4, and Xbox. But it originally released on the Dreamcast as a homebrew, so this is a re-release of that game. This is not the original, but most of these are all re-releases of Josh Prod's stuff, or I think they were available through Pixel Heart at one point in time. But these have the American style on them, so it fits a little better. Of course, this one has the Japanese backside, which I find interesting. I'm sure that manuals, I haven't opened these up, but I'm sure the manuals are swappable between US and Japanese like they usually are. So they can fit with your collection, whether you have Japanese or English. And I believe, like, you could probably find, like, Wave Studios and that also have, like, PAL versions on cases and stuff you can get. So there's ways to get them in whatever style you want. I guess I got 3. Did I miss one? Well, I got 3. Okay. I also picked up this 2040p test, which is just a simple, you can fool around with some of the video settings in the Dreamcast and everything. It's basically a fun debug tool. I just thought it was fun and it was pretty cheap, so I thought I'd go ahead and grab it. And then the big surprise I got for the Dreamcast was a 1.0 version of Sonic Adventure, the original release for the Japanese Dreamcast. Now, what's this? I have like 5 copies of Sonic Adventure on Dreamcast in English anyway, so why did I get the Japanese one? Well, again, this is version 1.0. So the difference between this is there are several more bugs in the release that we got, which were later fixed for Japan in the international version, which I'm still hunting for. Eventually would like to have all versions of Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast. So I'm only one away, surprisingly. Aside from the Dreamcast Tour demo, which I don't even think has been dumped online. I have never even seen copies of that in the wild or online. So, and I think a lot of people are hunting for that yet. But the difference, aside from the bugs, is there's also like other objects that were never or removed from the international versions that we got here in the US. The US is essentially version 1.1. So there's actually in Casinopolis Zone, when you play as Knuckles or Sonic, there's a neon sign of a cowgirl that lifts and lowers her leg, and if you bounce against her, she makes a rather suggestive noise. And of course, that was removed for the international audience. So maybe I'll have some gameplay comparison of that here shortly. Aside from that, big limited run release. I found this. I had to have this. I'm a huge fan of the cartoon back in the day when it came out. I went and collected the DVDs that they released or that Disney put out, and that is Disney Gargoyles. And this is the Genesis re-release that they did. I haven't opened it yet, but has a nice little foil cover on it. And on the back side is just a replication of what the original box was. I do actually own a original Genesis Disney Gargoyles copy. But I thought it was really cool that they were doing this in a clamshell. The cartridge is a midnight translucent cartridge, which I thought was really neat. Yeah, I ended up, I think last month or a month before, I did get the PS4 version that has the remaster of this game. But it was one that was kind of on my radar because I was looking at actually getting rid of my original Genesis Gargoyles just because I was like, well, it's worth so much now, I could kind of use the extra cash. And the fact that Limited Run came out with this, I could easily replace it, even though it's a reproduction. And some people frown on that. I don't really particularly care, especially these days when there's so many homebrew games out there that are really good. So it didn't really matter to me if it's an original copy or not. But it is an official re-release, I guess. So next up, we have some Vita games. And I'm super close. I'm 2 away from reaching 450 Vita games physically. And of course, today on October 1st, Nicalis made an announcement that they will be releasing a Vita game in 2024. Hard to believe. And I'm super anxious about it because I'm hoping I can get a copy. Otherwise, my whole North American Vita collection is pretty much incomplete then at that point. Anyway, these actually come from Mr. Adam Koralik himself, who's out in the UK, and mentioned that he has somebody who does a parody of his pictures of him going around various places with Pluto. Spoiler alert, I'm the one who does the parody pictures using the @Games Genesis clone. Just something fun that we do. We go back and forth. It's part of the lore of his Discord. But when he mentioned that to this person in the UK, they thought it was hilarious, and they shoved these Vita games to him.
No.
And Adam knows that I do collect Vita. It's the one thing that I continuously do. So he managed to get 4 PAL exclusive games that were never released here in the US. So we have Muppets The Big Adventure. This is the English. I believe this also came in like a Spanish cover as well as an alt. But we never got this physically here in the US. Vegas Party, which was released by Funbox Media. I missed this one originally. There's also Trumps, which is another card game. I don't recall if I have that one or not. I have to check my records. But there's this one and that one as well. A more harder to find game, Tadeo Jones. This is the first of 2 Tadeo Jones games that were released. I think Brazil, Spain, the UK only got this. I'm not 100% sure. I just know this is a unique little adventure game. In fact, aside from that, on the backside, you can kind of see it's actually not in English. It's in Spanish. So yeah, that was kind of fun. And lastly, we got Football Manager 2014 by Sega, where you coach your own soccer team. I thought this was unique. This actually had seen at a store in Wisconsin, but it didn't have the English text on it like this one does. And I passed on it. It was in really rough condition. But again, being it was a PAL exclusive that we didn't get, I wanted to add that to the collection because I'm slowly, I guess I'm creating my own next goal for it is to get most of the PAL exclusive games that we never got here in the West. Before I continue on with more of the Japanese exclusives, because there's a ton of Japanese exclusives, and I don't know if I'm ever going to finish that, or even get close to that. Well, we'll see what happens with that in the future, I guess. Next game, we have a PS5 game, and I actually finished this one just last week. And that is Shadow of the Ninja Reborn, a fun action platformer from the old Super Nintendo days that they remastered. Very tough. I died a lot. It took me 3 days to get through this, 3 evenings basically, at about 3 hours each. So not a relatively long game, very reminiscent of the Super Nintendo platformers, where you die, you try again, die, get a little further. But yeah, classic hack and slash platformer, much in the vein of like Shinobi, and those games of yesteryears. I enjoyed it. I did. But I probably won't go back to it. So, but yeah, this has the reversible cover as well as a manual inside of it. So I mean, it's not a huge manual, but it's at least something. Um, I do enjoy seeing that. So, and the last game I got was from Strictly Limited, another shoot 'em up. Uh, Eschitos. I do have this on Steam. It's an interesting shoot 'em up. Not one of the better ones, but I wanted to get it. This does include 2 versions. So you have Judgment Silver Sword and Carnival Sins. So there's that. I'll get around to it eventually. But again, since I played it on Steam, wasn't really one of my favorites. But that also came with a fancy postcard, like always, with their strictly limited releases, and a pretty sticker that I'm probably not going to put anywhere. But yeah, so that's that. So I probably won't be back again with another one of these until after October. So I hope everybody has a safe Halloween. Enjoy the time. I'm going to be busy actually here just next weekend. I will be helping out with a convention here in my hometown, a big game convention. It's the 4th year for this R2V2. Going to be in a new location than they normally are, much bigger. Kind of coming out of my convention retirement. 5 years ago, I kind of stopped working conventions. I did a lot of game rooms for various conventions for 5 years. And then I got busy with work and life and everything, so I just kind of stepped away from it. And I volunteered this time to help out for this one in particular. And so we'll see how it goes. If this is just to be a 1-year stint, or if they ask me back for next year, I don't know. I kind of organized getting together the game tournaments and getting in touch with a arcade vendor that I worked with in the past. Super cool guy. I consider him a good friend of mine. I run into him at the conventions every so often that I do go to. So yeah, kind of cool stuff. But other than that, as always, I thank you for watching. I will see you next time.